What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? This is Rap Sheet Hollywood. We bring you the live. It's the freshest commentary in Hollywood, but of course, with a hip hop flair. I'm your host, the incomparable Pook Diesel, and today we got a special episode for you. In the house, we have the distinguished. Not only is he a former prosecutor for the state of New York, not only is he also a former judge, judicial judge officer. He also is a current civil rights attorney. We have with us today one Jamie Santana. Jamie, how are you doing today?
I'm good, brother. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I hope I did you justice in your introduction. You got a lot of different titles. You're very distinguished. You do so much. Kind of just, if I messed anything up or if you want to clarify anything, tell us about your background.
Sure. I mean, you pretty much summed it up professionally. I would add to that, I practice criminal defense significantly as well. But in terms of the background, I've been practicing now since 2003 in terms of having my own practice. Prior to then, I was a prosecutor in New York State, New York City specifically. And since then, man, I really have had a tremendous opportunity to really gain diversified experience. You mentioned I was a judge. That was a great thing. And by the way, the best part about being a judge for me was that my children had an opportunity to see me as their father be sworn in as the first Latino judge in that specific county. And for me, man, that was everything. That was everything. But not only to my own kids, but to the community as well. Specifically the young people of color who don't get to see that often. But that was really a great opportunity for me. But in any event, as you mentioned, I practice civil rights, a lot of Section 1983 cases, such as police shootings, forced arrest, wrongful death, things of that nature. We do a lot of prison-related matters as well. And I love to give back to the community. I love to be in circles with like-minded people, such as yourself, of course. Great podcast here, and I really appreciate this.
Well, we're excited to have you here, Rap Sheet Hollywood representing. I have to just say really quickly, I am representing for my alma mater, San Diego State University. Our NCAA men's basketball team reached the finals.
See that.
We did not win, but we did reach the finals. We were the Cinderella story.
You did. That was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I'm from Connecticut, and always loved UConn. But this time I wanted to see some new blood, so I went with the alma mater. We lost, but shout out to the UConn Huskies for winning the NCAA men's championship. Got to start off on that note, right? So representing.
Absolutely.
We are here today
Absolutely,
to talk about the true crime series. The true crime series, Blood and Money, okay? I was fortunate to be a producer on the episode of Irene Silverman that is airing Tuesday, April 4th at 10 p.m. on CNBC. We also have the re-airing that's happening on Saturday, April 8th at 9 p.m. on the Oxygen Network. But we're here to talk about the show Blood and Money. It's in the Law and Order branding with Dick Wolf being the executive producer. But the episode specifically, we're talking about Irene Silverman. I had the pleasure of interviewing you for this show. Anytime you do a story about someone who's passed who's passed on, it's always a sad context that you kind of get into the story. For all those that are into true crime series, you know that a lot of the fans really want to learn from the episode. They want to be able to take from it. They want to understand it. They like to dissect it. So that is part of our job, right? Is to be able to look at some of these former crimes and really try to break them down to see what lessons can be learned, what can come from that. And so in this particular case, we have one, Irene Silverman. The date was 1998 was the year. She was an elderly woman, but a New York socialite. She was one who used to have extravagant parties. She lived on the Upper East Side, the distinguished Upper East Side of New York. And within that, she comes up missing. And so in a missing situation, a large scale operation of trying to find her, and helicopters, and the police did a big search, never finding her body. But there were some clues as to what might have happened to Irene Silverman. And so I'll jump into that a little bit, but I wanted to get your thoughts right away. Being that you were a former prosecutor, currently working in the civil rights defense field as an attorney, what was your perspective when you look at the Irene Silverman case? What were some of the thoughts that you kind of think about looking back now on our case?
Right. So this was a very interesting case. Whenever you have a case that involves someone missing and that is subsequently going to be presumed dead, when you don't have a body, that in and of itself makes it a very interesting case. And that's what they did not have in terms of evidence. District Attorney's Office, police, they could not confirm what, if anything, happened to her body. Nonetheless, it was missing. You mentioned this was in 1998. So that's what you call a circumstantial case, meaning you don't have the physical evidence of the body in and of itself. That typically makes it an uphill battle, so to speak, for the district attorney's office. Keep in mind, this was Robert Morgenthau, was the district attorney in Manhattan at the time. I could recall he gave interviews saying something to the effect of, listen, I realize we don't have a body, but if we believe a crime was committed, we are going to go all out with respect to prosecuting. And that's ultimately what that office did. They thought, circumstantially speaking, they felt they had enough circumstantial evidence that would inevitably be able to subsequently lead to a criminal conviction as to all charges. And that's what that office did. They pursued it vigorously.
Yeah, a very interesting case. One of the details that we know later came out was the fact that there were two live-in roommates to Miss Irene Silverman. She had this really huge townhouse in her brownstone, right in that very prestigious Upper East Side area, and she had allowed people to come in to rent some of her rooms. And two of the people, Kenneth Symes and also his mother, Sante Symes, were two of the people that actually were living in the house, but under other names. They had other IDs, and they had rented out a room from her. They were later charged with the crimes of committing the murder for Irene Silverman. And so there were a lot of circumstantial evidence that really kind of damned them in this case. And that's one of the reasons why we were able to kind of talk about this. But Irene, being who she was, being a socialite, being, of prestige, the police did everything possible to really search, and they really wanted to bring to justice this case. They brought about, as you could imagine, like I said, the helicopter searching, looking for this. Really key and interesting in this particular case, as I was working on it and producing the episode, one of the things that I thought was really interesting was the two individuals charged with the crime were actually already in custody for previous crimes, as they were just starting to really look at the investigation of the murder of Irene Silverman. So they actually had these two in custody under other crimes. Well, we start to find out later that there was a series of crimes being committed by these two individuals. So it got to be pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Tell us from your standpoint, as you kind of look at it, what was it from your perspective that you thought really kind of was damning evidence for these two, Kenneth Symes and also Santi Symes?
So what was interesting from the beginning, keep in mind, in many instances, in terms of the strength or weight of evidence for the district attorney's office, in many instances, there may be things like a video, an audio, a key witness, a material witness, as we call it. There may be something like that that somehow led to an immediate arrest. You didn't have that in this case, at least initially. Interestingly enough, the mother-son duo, Sante Symes being the mother and Kenneth Symes being the son, they were arrested on an unrelated totally separate jurisdiction, grand larceny case. When they picked up on that matter, the law enforcement officials involved in that case, somehow the information, identification, things of that nature was spread throughout the law enforcement departments, if you will. And lo and behold, the law enforcement in New York started putting two and two together and said, hey, wait a minute, there's some kind of a connection here. And that's how it essentially came about, all from a simple, nonviolent grand larceny case. But in terms of the one piece of evidence, because that still was not enough, in terms of the one piece of evidence that really sort of opened up the can, so to speak, here was recordings that the law enforcement was able to come into possession of. And a lot of people don't realize when you're incarcerated, I always tell clients, do not speak on the phone. But unfortunately, many of them just don't listen. But in any event, that's what happened in this case. And you had the son, Kenny Kimes, reached out to an individual and started speaking about this bag that he needed the person to retrieve. I think it may have even been a black bag or something to that effect. He needed that individual to pick that bag up. And lo and behold, of course, law enforcement, they're on the line, they're listening. One thing led to the next. They started unraveling a ton of circumstantial evidence that led them to eventually start interviewing people. They went to the home of Irene Silverman. Keep in mind, Irene Silverman, as you mentioned, was a socialite. She was well-loved and well-respected in her community. She was a very wealthy woman, and because of that, she had certain things in order. She had certain individuals in her circle at all times. She had a certain system. She was known to do X, Y, and Z for the most part on a daily basis. So when she went missing, this was alarming. This was unusual. And obviously, the law enforcement had an opportunity to start putting two and two together. They spoke with the staff for Irene Silverman, and they started to discover all this circumstantial evidence that was actually in the home of Irene Silverman, who had been renting to this, who she thought was just two regular individuals. It turned out to be Irene Silverman's, I guess, unfortunate decision in terms of opening up her home and opening up her heart. She let the mother and son duo in, and the whole time, and this is what officers learned, the whole time the mother-son duo were plotting. They were scheming. They were carrying out their plan to eventually do away with Irene Silverman, and in the process, really take complete control and possession of her assets, her real estate, money. I mean, it was crazy. And then in terms of the circumstantial evidence, as you mentioned, it was amazing how much they started to really discover, and it all added up. It all started to make sense.
Yeah, Jamie, it's crazy when you think about this case. Obviously, this is why we would want to be able to air one of these kind of episodes, because it is so wild. And once again, Kenneth Kimes, and I think I might have said Symes earlier, but Kenneth Kimes and also Santi Kimes, the mother-son duo. The mother, in a lot of ways, was very manipulative. Once again, this was the 4th of July weekend, 1998. The fact that these two had perpetrated to be someone else, started to live in the home. Irene was known for having a lot of friends, having the socialite kind of parties. They targeted her. They had previously were on the run. Actually, we found out later that murders had been committed in LA. They had drove across the country, had situations in Florida, and had made their way to New York and kind of continued this criminal activity. Inside their vehicle was found, and I'll just look to our documents here, they had syringes, they had rubber gloves, notebooks, computer wigs, plastic handcuffs, micro cassette recorder tapes, eavesdropping devices, these people were planning this out the whole time. And as you mentioned, the most damning of the evidence was while they were locked up on the phone, they talked about a black bag. And in that black bag, it laid out everything that possibly could happen in this case. It's one of the most wildest cases that I've ever had the pleasure of being able to produce an episode on. It was really, really something that is crazy. I think that for our audience, I want them to make sure that they tune in, that they check this out. It's on CNBC once again. Tuesday, actually tonight it's airing. Tuesday, April 4th. You want to check that out at 10 p.m. And then also it's going to re-air on the Oxygen Network Saturday, April 8th at 9 p.m. So you got to tune in to check this out. I mean, we could go into so many different layers to this case. We could go on and talking about it for many different ways. But I really want to kind of sum it up a little bit. What was your experience like, filming with us for this particular episode? I know that we did something very unique with your particular episode that we hadn't done in any others. We actually had you recreate the closing remarks. We actually had you kind of sum up and give us your interpretive expression on what that would be like reading those arguments to the jury. What was your experience filming like with us for this particular episode?
Oh, it was fantastic. In fact, you took me back to my days of being a prosecutor. And whenever a case would come across my desk, of course, we had no choice but to accept the facts as they were. And whatever amount of evidence we had, it was what it was at that time. And you tried to do the right thing. You try to zealously represent the state of New York and its victims. But you always kept in mind that it was important to do that from a very respectful manner or approach, if you will. You wanted to make sure your efforts in terms of being a prosecutor were consistent truly with good ethics and justice. And so you took me back to those days. But it was a really, really great experience. And I think what we did that day, as you mentioned, was unique. And whenever you have something that's unique, it's great to be a part of something that's being done for the first time, right? That's a beautiful thing. And when you have great chemistry on the set, the way we did that day, it certainly helps move things along and makes you want to do it again in the future. And in terms of the approach you took, our hope, of course, is that the audience, when they have an opportunity to watch the episode, they're really going to feel as if they're being brought into back in 1998 up until early 2000s when the case was being prosecuted. And it's an excellent show you guys have going on. You did a phenomenal job on it in terms of your role. Greatly appreciate that. Definitely.
Well, thank you. You're far too kind, Jamie. But yeah, I'll take some more of that. Just to say that, no, you represent it very well. I'm sure this is not the last time that we'll be working together. I also just want to say that it was a pleasure really kind of getting your perspective. You had mentioned previously just kind of your perspective, your unique perspective as a Latino, former prosecutor, former judge, now defense attorney. That, adds up for a lot of things that kind of give us a very unique perspective. And so, you represent it well. I want to say thank you for participating. I know our audience is going to love it, when they tune in. I want to just give you some closing remarks. What would you say are some lessons learned from this particular case? When you think about Irene Silverman, you think about the whole thing with Santi and Kenneth Kimes. What are some lessons learned that we can take away from this episode?
Sure, absolutely. So as a defense attorney, I look at my clients not as just numbers or dollar signs, so to speak. I personalize my cases, which means I feel obligated to talk to clients who are either going through a case or maybe someone who's not yet arrested. And so I say that because I think one of the lessons that can be learned from this case is that, listen, you may think you're getting away with something, but sometimes it's going to catch up to you. And if your case is met with the right district attorney's office and the right prosecutors, at some point you may very well be held accountable. I think one of the other lessons to take away from this is that you have to be careful in terms of who you trust. And it really doesn't matter whether you're Latino, Black, white. When you do things like invite people into your home, which is an excellent thing, that's a very kind-hearted thing, you would think. But unfortunately, in this day and age, we have to be careful. We have to exercise thorough, proper judgment with respect to the manner in which we deal with people. And sometimes that may mean we can't go as far as we would like to extend ourselves. And it doesn't mean we're being disingenuous. It just means we just are being careful, and maybe we should do that more often. You take a person like Irene Silverman, well-known, well-loved in the community, a wealthy woman. She opened up her doors. She let someone in who she believed needed a place to stay, right? That's not an uncommon thing, and you don't have to be a wealthy person to allow someone to stay in your home, whether they're paying you or not. That's something people do often. But in terms of this case, lesson learned. We should definitely be careful in terms of everything we do, especially when we bring people into our personal lives.
Well, I thank you very much, Jamie. This was great. Appreciate you coming on our podcast here.
Appreciate you as well.
And talking with us. We look forward to watching the episode, and I want to get your thoughts after you kind of check it out. I know,
yeah, of course.
From my standpoint, you've done an excellent job. So yeah, let's
tune in.
You guys make sure you tune in. I've said it before, but yes, Tuesday, March 4th, 10 p.m. on CNBC. Also re-airing on Oxygen Saturday, April the 8th at 9 p.m. on the Oxygen Network. You guys tune in. This is Rap Sheet Hollywood. My guest today, attorney Jamie Santana. Appreciate it very much. This is Rap Sheet Hollywood. Guess what, guys? We are out. Peace.
Appreciate it, brother.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.